They say blood is thicker than water. That family will always have your back. That's what I believed when I sacrificed everything for my little brother Jason. But what they don't tell you is this. The deepest cuts come from the people who share your DNA. Because while I was working myself into the ground, selling everything I owned, even pawning my engagement ring to pay for Jason's college, he was busy destroying my life piece by piece. And when I finally discovered the truth, I didn't just get mad. I didn't scream or cry or beg for answers. No. I got creative. And my revenge was so calculated, so perfectly orchestrated, that by the time Jason realized what was happening, it was already too late. This is the story of how I turned the tables so completely that my own brother begged me to stop. But I was just getting started. To understand how deep this betrayal went, you need to know who Jason was to me. My name is Samantha, and Jason is my little brother. When our parents died in a car accident 3 years ago, I was 28 and Jason was just 20. I had been working as a nurse's aide and living in a small apartment, finally starting to build my own life. I had just gotten engaged to David, a sweet guy who managed the local hardware store. But the night of the funeral, Jason broke down completely. "I can't do this alone," he sobbed. "I'm nobody without Mom and Dad. College was their dream for me." That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I looked at my baby brother, smart, charming, with Dad's eyes and Mom's smile, and I decided right there that I would become both his sister and his parents. I had no idea I was signing up to be his victim. Within a month, I had moved Jason into my apartment. I gave him the bedroom and slept on the couch. I took on weekend shifts at a local diner on top of my regular job. When David suggested we postpone the wedding to help with expenses, I agreed without hesitation. Just until Jason graduates, I'd tell him. Just until he's stable. But here's what I didn't know. Jason had already dropped out of college 2 months before our parents died. He just never told anyone. And that decision to postpone our wedding? It would end up costing me more than I ever imagined. For 2 years, Jason played his role perfectly. Every Monday, he'd kiss me goodbye as I left for my double shifts. "Wish me luck on my psychology exam today, sis." Every month, he'd show me his tuition bills. Professional-looking documents that I never questioned, because why would I? This was my brother. He even brought home fake progress reports. "Dean's List again," he'd announce, and I would beam with pride, calling our aunt to brag about my brilliant little brother. But Jason's days weren't spent in lecture halls. They were spent at underground poker games in warehouse basements across the city. Places where desperate men bet their rent money and college kids like Jason burned through their family savings. And Jason was good at it. At first. The money I scraped together from my 60-hour work weeks, the money I earned scrubbing hospital floors at 5 a.m. before my diner shift, the money I made selling my grandmother's jewelry piece by piece. Jason was betting it all on poker hands and basketball games. But gambling addiction doesn't care how smart you are. And Jason's luck was about to run out in the worst possible way. It was a Tuesday evening in October when I first sensed something was wrong. I came home from my shift at the hospital to find Jason pacing in the kitchen, his usual confident smirk replaced by something that looked almost like panic. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting down the groceries I'd bought with my tip money. Yeah, of course," Jason said quickly. Too quickly. "Just stressed about midterms, you know?" But I noticed things. The way his hands shook slightly when he reached for his coffee. The way he kept checking his phone every few seconds. The way he avoided eye contact. That night, I heard him on the phone in his room. The walls were thin, and even though he was whispering, I caught fragments. "I need more time. My sister doesn't know. I can get you the money. Just give me another week." I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just student loan stuff. Jason was stressed about finances. That was normal, right? But then the calls started coming to the house phone. Deep, unfriendly voices asking for Jason. When I would say he wasn't home, they'd leave messages. "Tell him Marcus called. Tell him time's running out." When I asked Jason about it, he had an answer ready. "Oh, that's my study group leader. We have this big project due, and he's just really intense about deadlines." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd catch myself wondering, what kind of study group leader calls at midnight? What kind of college project makes someone sound genuinely threatening? The truth came crashing down on a Wednesday in November. I had left work early because I was getting sick. Nothing serious, just a bad cold. I figured I'd surprise Jason with his favorite takeout from the Chinese place downtown. But when I got home at 2 p.m., expecting to find the apartment empty, I heard voices. Multiple voices. And the sound of poker chips. I stood outside the door, key in hand, listening to my brother's voice. Don't worry about the money, guys. My sister's got it covered. She thinks I'm some kind of genius college boy, so she keeps throwing cash at me. Laughter erupted from inside. Seriously, Jason continued. She sold her engagement ring last month and doesn't even know I saw her do it. She thinks I was at class, but I watched her walk into that pawn shop like some kind of martyr. More laughter. Someone said, "Your sister sounds like a real sucker." And Jason's response made my blood freeze. She is. But she's my sucker. I stood in that hallway for 20 minutes, listening to my brother mock my sacrifices to a room full of strangers. I heard him bet money I'd earned scrubbing toilets. I heard him joke about my pathetic engagement to David. I heard him call me naive, stupid, gullible. But here's the thing about betrayal this deep. It doesn't make you cry. Not at first. It makes you cold. It makes you focused. It makes you dangerous. I quietly backed away from the door, got in my car, and drove to the public library. I had research to do. For the next 3 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I started small. When Jason left for his fake classes, I'd search his room. Not dramatically, not desperately. Methodically, like a professional. In his sock drawer, I found business cards for 3 different underground poker rooms. In his backpack, I discovered betting slips for basketball games I'd never heard him mention. Under his mattress, I found a notebook where he'd been tracking his wins and losses. The numbers made me sick. In 2 years, Jason had lost over $80,000. My $80,000. But I didn't stop there. I followed him. I'd call in sick to my evening diner shift and tail Jason's bus to the industrial district. I watched him disappear into warehouses and basement clubs. I took pictures. I wrote down license plates. I documented everything. But all this investigation was taking a toll on more than just me. The financial strain, the constant lies, the stress of supporting Jason, it was destroying my relationship with David. "You're choosing him over us," David said one evening after I'd told him I needed to postpone our wedding again. "When does this end? When do we get to start our life?" I didn't have an answer. Because deep down, I was starting to realize Jason would always need more. That's when David made the hardest decision of his life. "I love you," he said, tears in his eyes, "but I can't watch you destroy yourself for someone who doesn't appreciate it. I can't keep waiting for a future that might never come." He left that night. And suddenly, I had lost both my fiancé and my life savings to my brother's lies. But that heartbreak would soon be overshadowed by something much worse. 1 week after David left, I got a visitor that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon when someone knocked on my door. Heavy, demanding knocks that made my heart race. I looked through the peephole and saw a man I'd never met, tall, muscular, with tattoos covering his arms and a face that had seen too many fights. "Is Jason home?" he asked when I cracked the door open. "No, he's at school," I said automatically. Even then, I was still lying for him. The man laughed, but it wasn't friendly. "School? Are you his roommate or something?" "I'm his sister," I said cautiously. "Well then, your brother owes me $17,000, and he hasn't been to school in 2 years. My blood went cold. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Marcus Rodriguez. And your brother is 3 weeks late on a payment that could get him seriously hurt." That's when everything clicked. The mysterious phone calls. Jason's panic attacks. The way he'd been begging me for more money lately. "How much did you say he owes?" I asked quietly. 17 grand, with interest. And it goes up every day he doesn't pay. I stared at this dangerous stranger on my doorstep and realized Jason had dragged me into something that could get us both killed. But then I had an idea. A beautiful, terrible idea. What if I paid you? I said suddenly. All of it. Today. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You got that kind of cash? I had been saving every penny for months, liquidating everything I owned. Between selling my engagement ring, my car, and draining my savings, I had exactly what he needed. I do, I said, but I want something in return. Like what? I looked this dangerous man in the eye and made a deal with the devil. I want you to keep pretending he owes you money. Keep calling. Keep the pressure on. And when I give you the signal, only when I give you the signal, then you can stop. Marcus looked confused. Why would you want that? I smiled for the first time in weeks, but it wasn't a happy smile. Because my brother needs to learn what consequences feel like, and I'm going to be the one to teach him. With Marcus as my unknowing accomplice, I began phase 2 of my plan. I started leaving evidence around the apartment. Fake eviction notices. Disconnection threats from utilities. I even hired an actor to call the house pretending to be from the college, asking why tuition payments had stopped. Jason was spiraling, but he still hadn't confessed. Instead, he kept asking me for more money. I need $2,000 for textbooks, he'd say. The professors are requiring new materials, he'd claim. There's an unexpected lab fee, he'd lie. And every time, I would nod sadly and say, I'll find a way. But I wasn't giving him money anymore. I was giving him much less than he asked for, telling him I didn't have enough, and there were bills I had to take care of. He'd grumble each time, and I'd pretend not to pay attention. Jason's poker debts kept growing. His stress reached a breaking point when Marcus's guys started showing up at our apartment building. Sis, Jason said one night, his voice shaking, I think there might be some dangerous people in the neighborhood. Maybe we should move. Moving costs money, Jason. I replied calmly. Money I'm already spending on your education. That's when Jason made his biggest mistake. He decided to steal from me directly. I had been waiting for this moment. I'd left exactly $3,000 in cash in my jewelry box, money I could afford to lose, money I'd been saving for my tip jar. 3 days later, the money was gone. But Jason didn't know I had been documenting everything with hidden cameras I'd installed around the apartment. He had no idea that I'd been recording his every move, waiting for him to finally steal from me directly. That weekend, Jason announced he was going on a study retreat with his college friends. But I knew exactly where he was going, the biggest underground poker tournament of the year, held in a warehouse across town. So I followed him there, and I brought backup. David, my ex-fiancé, had remained surprisingly supportive through everything. When I told him the truth about Jason, showed him the evidence, the photos, the recordings, David was furious but not surprised. I always felt something was off about him, David admitted. I'm sorry I left you to deal with this alone. What do you need me to do? Even though we'd broken up, David still cared about me. And he wanted to see Jason face consequences for destroying our relationship. That Saturday night, while Jason was gambling away my stolen money, David and I approached the warehouse owner. I'd done my research. This guy was operating without permits, without licenses, without any legal protection. We're not here to cause trouble, I told the warehouse owner. We just want to document something for legal purposes. I explained that my brother had stolen money from me and was inside gambling with it right now. I showed him the video evidence from my hidden cameras of Jason taking the money from my apartment. I just needed permission to document him using it here as final proof. The warehouse owner was smart enough to recognize a potential legal nightmare. Take your pictures and get out, he said. And don't come back. I didn't stage a dramatic public humiliation. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, I waited for Jason to come home that Monday morning, hung over and defeated. He'd lost everything at the poker tournament, the stolen money, plus additional cash he'd borrowed from other gamblers. How was your study retreat? Asked sweetly. Jason mumbled something about it being educational. That's when I placed a thick folder on the kitchen table. Sit down, Jason. We need to talk. I opened the folder slowly, methodically. First came the photographs of him at various poker games. Then the bank statements showing my depleted accounts. Then the fake transcripts he'd been showing me. Jason's face went white, but he tried to bluff. I can explain. Then came the recordings. I continued calmly. Audio of you calling me a sucker. Video of you stealing money from my jewelry box. Documentation of every lie you've told me for 2 years. Jason started to stand up, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Because the beautiful thing about having evidence, Jason, is that it gives you options. Option 1. I go to the police. Theft from a family member is still theft. You're looking at jail time. Option 2. I call Marcus Rodriguez and tell him his debt collection is no longer needed because I've decided to handle this myself. Jason looked confused. What are you talking about? I smiled. Did you really think Marcus was still after you for money? Jason, I paid your debt 3 months ago. Every threatening phone call since then has been theater. Performance art, you might say. The color drained from Jason's face completely. But here's option 3. I continued. The option I actually prefer. You're going to get a job, I said simply. A real job. And you're going to pay me back every penny you stole. With interest. But I'm not finished. You're also going to move out of my apartment. Today. And you're going to tell our entire family exactly what you did. Every detail. Every lie. Every betrayal. Jason started to protest, but I held up a small recording device. Because if you don't, I'll play this recording at Thanksgiving dinner next week. The one where you call me a sucker. Where you mock my sacrifices. Where you laugh about pawning my engagement ring. And then I'll mail copies to every person in your address book. Every friend, every ex-girlfriend, every potential employer who might Google your name. Jason was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a man who'd finally been caught. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have, I replied. The question is, are you going to take the easy road or the hard road? Jason chose the easy road. He moved out that day. He got a job washing dishes at a restaurant downtown. And every month, like clockwork, he sends me a check for $500. It'll take him 12 years to pay me back completely. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not actually about the money. 3 months later, I got a call from our Aunt Margaret. I'm so proud of how you handled Jason's situation, she said. It takes real strength to love someone enough to hold them accountable. I realized then that my revenge wasn't about destroying Jason. It was about saving him. About teaching him that actions have consequences and that the people who love you the most are the ones who won't let you destroy yourself. Today, I work as a nurse supervisor at the same hospital where I used to scrub floors. David and I got back together and married last spring. We bought a small house across town, far from any poker rooms. And Jason? He's still washing dishes, but he's also taking night classes. Real classes at a real community college. He calls me once a week, and our conversations are slowly becoming less awkward. He's never apologized, not really. But every $500 check he sends is an admission of guilt. Every month he stays clean is a small victory. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. Sometimes it's giving them the chance to rebuild themselves into someone worth forgiving. But that's a choice they have to make for themselves. My job was just to make sure he finally understood the cost of his decisions. Mission accomplished. So that's my story. After everything Jason put me through, after he destroyed my relationship, stole my money, and called me a sucker to his friends, do you think I went too far? Some people say I should have just confronted him immediately. Cut him off and let him face the consequences alone. But honestly, I think he needed to understand the full weight of what he'd done. The psychological pressure, the fear, the stress, that's exactly what I lived with for 2 years while he was lying to my face. But I want to know what you think. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have played the long game like I did, or handled it differently? And if you've ever had a family member betray your trust like this, share your story in the comments. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone in dealing with toxic family members. If you think Jason got exactly what he deserved, smash that like button. And if you want to hear more stories about people who thought they could take advantage of their families and got served some cold, calculated justice, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, I've got plenty more stories where karma comes back to bite people who think family means they can get away with anything. Because here's the thing I learned. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who need the hardest lessons. And sometimes, you're exactly the right person to teach them. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong out there.